microphone up close. Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
But I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, pistols and fondle slap of choice, and computers, internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It's hard to get real information. Because seriously, they just raise two sources whenever I try to prove out. It's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to be sadly disappointed. Another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty, dirty old man.
Really? You can't be serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions. Eruptions, whatever.
Like 8 hours, kind of.
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from FEMA Region 2, within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America. We bring you the Ochelli Effect.
I damn sure know I'm an original. We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for a 19-year-old girl to eventually get up the gumption to put these things out.
And the 20th day of January 2015. The Ochelli Effect on UCY.TV radio. Good evening. Thank you for tuning in. Whether you came to UCY.TV/TOE or you decided to grab us on the TuneIn app or whatever else. We are going to do a little something different. Normally I do the Tuesday nights with the Liberty Beacon, but Roger Landry could not make it, nor could my other Liberty Beacon guest make it. Some sort of problem with their Skype, apparently. So, I am told that I have phone lines, and here's what we're going to do. We're just going to make this one up as we go along. I mean, I got a couple of notes about things I was working on and this and that that had nothing to do with this show tonight, but hey, we could go over a couple of notes. I'll just take a look at what's in my browser, and I asked a couple of people if they wanted to drop in with me, and we shall see how that goes. So, let's see. Yeah, it looks like, okay, Barry Prince will wind up joining me at some point, and Dylan Wade might also join me. But in the meantime, it'll be me not sounding as distracted as I do at the moment, because that's what happens when the blind guy tries to multitask. Let me see also if I can get the chat room open. That would be helpful, useful, well, at least maybe mildly entertaining tonight. Oh, Lord. It is one of those sorts of weeks, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So, the adventure continues. Like I say, I'm always trying to work on doing different presentations on this show. I had a little conversation with Vince Easley about a day or so ago, and then, of course, couldn't get back to him. Probably I'll bring Ralph Epperson on here at some point. Vince had him on a couple of times. Interesting guy. But who knows what else will develop out of that. There we go. I actually have the chat room in front of me now, so good evening to all you guys. Who knows if you guys are posting in there still? Who knows if I'm being heard? What the hell? I'll talk to the wall for the next hour if I have to. Or actually 2. Anyways. Let's see now if the Skype cooperates and we don't have a whole lot of noise. That should be Dylan Wade. Dylan.
Hi, guys. Is there any...
Hey, you sound like you're at the ocean a little bit, but it's okay. It's kind of clear. How you doing?
Good. Sorry about that.
Not an issue, man. Don't even sweat it. Don't even sweat it. I was, before I get to some of these, newer news stories and things like that I was looking at and some of my other research, let me ask you, where do you want to go? I mean, I was starting to put together some notes on the Federal Reserve so I could do sort of a coherent historical background on it, which is actually for that documentary that I'm working on. But, so this is one segment of it. And I did realize that I haven't actually done a straight up, like, hey, here's the historical Federal Reserve, the way it came to be, why it is the way it is, you know? You,
Right.
you hearing me, Dylan, or?
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
All right. Well, anyway, yeah, you see, the thing is this. I mean, we all make these allusions to it all the time. We talk about, obviously it's a bad thing, but it reminds me of the old Frankenstein movies, you know what I mean? Where fire bad, Federal Reserve bad, you know? But people never explain themselves. They never talk about what the actual function is. I mean, they talk about really quickly the fractional reserve banking system and things like this, but they never bring the historical context into it. And of course, a lot of the people that like to break my chops will sit there and trace everything back to the state of Israel. But hey, the Federal Reserve actually began before there was a state of Israel, and the template existed long before that. You know your history about the Federal Reserve, Dylan?
A little bit.
Okay.
I think you've alluded to it a couple times on these shows.
Yeah, we've alluded to it, but not really gotten in depth about it, right?
Well, we've talked about Jersey.
Yeah, well, but that's not the Federal Reserve.
No, it was part of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, because, well, that's right. We talked about the train coming out of Hoboken. See, but, okay, long previous to that, and this is where, of course, you can enter the Rothschilds right into the discussion right away. If you look back at the Bank of England, which was established in 1694, okay, there you find the original template that we're still dealing with today for printing the money and, printing the money out of nothing and loaning it to the government at interest. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, wow, man. You know what? It's weird because before, when I talked to you off the air right before you came on, it wasn't this staticky. It's kind of a little extra staticky. It's not making that horrible noise it was, but it's like you're at the ocean.
Yeah, sorry, it's a bad connection.
Do me a favor, just mute up for. Can you mute up for a second and let me see if it's still making that noise or if it's just your open mic?
Alright, muting.
See, it's a lot better when you mute up. Okay.
When someone gets home, I'll be out of this chair. Maybe it's where the wire's at.
Ah, that could be it. All right. Well, let's push forward, anyways, right? So we have the Federal Reserve wasn't the first centralized bank in this country. You know that, right?
No, there was one in 1813, correct? That Jackson got rid of.
Well, there was actually two centralized banks prior to, and Jackson is involved in getting rid of the second one. But the first one, actually, a guy named Robert Morris brought us the first Bank of North America, it was called, right? And this was during the Revolutionary War and was kind of the excuse for bringing this thing into existence was to make it so that, we could deal with the debt that was going to ensue based on, our whole conflict with England. And now, one of Robert Morris's aides was Alexander Hamilton. So, of course, we know Hamilton from bringing us that second wonderful bank, right?
Did not know that.
Yeah, well, we have the first bank of the United States, Alexander Hamilton brought in. And, Thomas Jefferson. I love this Thomas Jefferson quote from about that time period. Let's see. Back to the Templars in England, they adopted the Jewish usury. Yeah, I know, but this is the first time, the idea about the Templars and the Jewish usury and all that wasn't codified into a charter until the first Bank of England, which, like I said, was in 1694. Anyways, so Thomas Jefferson had a lot to say about it back then. He was in opposition to the bank, right? But, of course, the first bank of the United States, which was post... Yeah. Was post the first Bank of North America, kind of interesting. In 1795, the U.S. government actually sells off its 20% interest, in the central bank, which makes it become a private corporation, much like we're dealing with today. Now, that charter was due to be renewed in 1811, and it wasn't renewed because we didn't have a war at that time. So right on time, of course, we have the War of 1812 coming in. Because if you ever notice, immediately following the formation of a central bank, or the action of a central bank getting underway, we always have this tremendous amount of pressure to enter into these wider conflicts. I gotta do something about the noise, man. Let me see. Maybe if I turn it down for myself here, it'll be better. Because I'm finding myself kind of yelling over it. Well, anyway, okay. So, the War of 1812 comes in because the U.S. ends up drowning in debt and all that kind of good stuff. And I find it interesting because, of course, in 1816, President Madison signs into existence the Second Bank of the United States, which has a 20-year charter. Now, this is the one that Jackson's involved in taking apart,
Mm-hmm.
So, in 1832, the banksters put forth a renewal of the bank's charter early, thinking that President Jackson wouldn't bother to oppose it, based on the idea that he had a re-election coming up, and they thought that it would kind of be an unpopular idea for him to oppose it, So it goes up, and he goes in for re-election. Actually, kind of funny because in 33, he winds up taking on that slogan, which is Jackson and no bank. And in 1834, immediately after that's shot down, the banksters turn around and stage another one of these financial crises. In 1836, the charter expires. And then immediately after the charter expiring, we have another panic in 1837, which was spurred by the English banking oligarchy, as it were. So of course you have those guys from the other side of the pond, as it were, causing our problems. But interesting thing happens that same year in 1837 is a guy named John Pierpont Morgan is born. That name sound familiar to you, Dylan?
Yes.
Yeah, well, eventually he would become the guy who is partnered in with what we know as J.P. Morgan and Company, right? But interestingly enough, even at the outset of his career as a financier, as it were, he's responsible for some of the largest corporate entities to emerge from the time period, like GE, General Motors, AT&T, DuPont. Literally financing railroads and things like this. And of course, one of the biggest things he did was to buy out. The Carnegie and to create what would later become U.S. Steel, So there's a large corporation. Of course, the House of Representatives turns around and has an investigation and all that stuff. But I mean, there's all this history that's sort of part of American history, anyways. That's sort of the pretext to the creation of the and not the least of which is, after the subcommittee on banking and currency is done with their work and all that kind of good stuff. I mean, World War I, engulfs Europe from 1914 to 1917, right on time because, of course, even though the Federal Reserve Act was signed into existence in 1913, they didn't really get underway in their mechanism until 1914,
Right.
But, of course, the typical story is that, Archduke Ferdinand Franz Ferdinand of Austria was assassinated, and this is what sparked the war, because he was killed by these individuals who were part of the Serbian Black Hand. Therefore, Austria wanted to strike back against Serbia and had to kind of, get their ducks in a row, as it were, with Germany and all that. And all of these different protective pacts that each of these nations had over there cause the conflagration, which turns into World War I. At least that's the mainstream story,
Okay.
Because this happened while in Sarajevo, which, take a look at how, Bosnia and Herzegovina, or however you pronounce that, is always, one of those great flashpoints in Europe. And this guy who was assassinated was actually the nephew of the Emperor of Austria. I don't know. Do you know any of this stuff? Any of this stuff grabbing you? Is this catch your interest or what?
Catches my interest. I've just never heard of any of it.
Really? See, that's the thing. I don't think anybody really takes a good look at the history. I mean, World War I is, again, offered in mainstream history books as, the flashpoint, as it were, being the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, the sinking of the Lusitania by a German U-boat, where 150 some odd U.S. passengers were supposedly killed on a British ocean liner, and this is all part of what kind of set it up. Of course, there's also the Zimmermann Telegraph, where Germany allegedly sends a deal to Mexico, trying to get them to join the side of the Central Powers, or whatever they called themselves at that point, and sort of take their side against the U.S., and they were promising them even the return of formerly Mexican territory. Stuff like that. This is all part of the legend, though, and definitely worth examining, because I think that none of this had anything to do with why we went into World War I. And of course, the United States enters at exactly the same time that the Russians are faced with the overthrow of the Tsar, as it were. The Communist Revolution takes place in 1917. So, right about the time that we're entering into the war, the Russians are leaving because, they had enough to deal with on their own home front.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But I don't know. I think that this is definitely something worth discussing. And, gee, what would happen if all this kind of stuff came up in your history class, I wonder?
Oh, that's actually a scary thought.
Yeah, and then of course we get into, if you take a look at it from that context, if you look at the Panic of 1907, which was manufactured by Morgan and his buddies, to try and justify the resurrection once again of a centralized bank, the atmosphere of World War I, beginning to sort of unfold, again, we have the excuse to bring back the centralized bank because we're going to need to do these larger transactions and handle, world affairs in this way. So, I don't know. I think it's an interesting piece of work to really get into the details of it, and I just kind of made an outline of it and didn't even really get into any of the deeper kind of facts or factoids that are out there about it. But I noticed that nobody even touches on it like this much,
No, nobody does.
So I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
No, I think you should do it.
I think it's worth a 2-hour show, and it's definitely worth a segment on the the documentary is going to be about 9/11, but I think it's still worth going over this because we should see how the money powers, come together and how this all coalesces. It's not simply the project for the new American century alone. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people point to that, and that's important. I mean, you know about the PNAC report, right?
A little bit.
All you need to really know is that, once again, the middle managers of the puppet masters come out and, rise up with the brushfire warfare as usual and do their thing regarding staged events and so on and so forth, like Gulf of Tonkin and so on, right? Wow, I'm getting hit with all kinds of messages here. Okay. Yeah, anytime, Barry, if you want to join in, that's fine, and we could change directions. I really don't have an agenda tonight, so, feel free to drop in, and I'm sure you would turn it any which way you want. So Barry Prince will probably drop in a few minutes here. So let's see, what else do I have? Well, I was looking at the CIA instructions to their media assets regarding the JFK assassination. And criticism of the Warren report. A lot of people don't know that this stuff was declassified, and when we're talking about the disinformation from the intelligence agencies, this is not a new phenomena or even a post 9/11 phenomena. You know what I mean?
No, it goes back.
Yeah, like way back. Let's see, what else did I have on the list here? Now, somebody passed me this, and it's kind of an old Salon article. But apparently Seymour Hersh was putting out some information in 2004 about Abu Ghraib. Let's see, that should bring in Barry Prince. How you doing tonight, Barry? Okay, maybe not. Seems to be there. Barry, are you with us? Wow, okay.
Okay, sorry about that, Chuck.
Oh, no problem.
I was trying to get rid of some other noise in my background there, and I didn't realize my microphone was unmuted, typical Barry Prince move. But yeah, great, having a great day. And how are you doing, Dylan?
Good, Barry, yeah?
Yeah, I was bringing to your audience attention what they stated in the local newspaper up here is that, radiation monitoring is going underway right now. The University of Northern British Columbia has jumped on it, and also Northwest Community College. They are starting to see levels down south that are coming up really high, and they expect it to hit real hard here in the next couple months up in the Prince Rupert North Coast area. So it's kind of good today to see that actually in the local paper, where it's just bringing people's awareness a little bit to the fact that this is going to be a reality they're going to be dealing with very, very shortly. We've been talking about it for years, Chuck, but now it's being talked about in public a lot more. And what we can do about it, I don't know. I think we're going to see a mass exodus of the North Coast here when people really start to see what's going on with this radiation, especially here in the next couple of years.
Yeah, but sadly, Barry, this is so many years in the making now. I mean, where is anybody going to go? This stuff has already, circled the globe a few times.
Yeah, you know what? Leaving the North Coast is only maybe a short-term fix. No matter where you go on this planet, this stuff is going to get us. So what's happening right now in the Pacific, Chuck, we've talked about it so many times, and it's just a travesty that we can't even begin to put our fingers on. What we're doing to this planet right now is a travesty that we can't even begin to explain to our children, but here we are. And nuclear power, and I know, that's one of our biggest peeves in the world, and the fact that now we're really actually looking at serious implications for the Pacific Ocean. It's being brought to people's attention. We've got the universities out now monitoring it. Dana Dunford there from the nuclear proctologist, I told you I was out with him a little while ago, and I saw with my own eyes an extinction, not more drop in sea life than I would expect it to see. I mean, I've been diving the ocean here, Chuck, for 35 years, and what I witnessed on my one trip out there was kind of disturbing. Now it's being brought to the public's attention. What we can do about it, buddy, I don't know. I think it's getting to the point where we can't do anything about it. We're going to have to completely change our way of thinking, the way we deal with our food supply. The impacts on our food chain are going to go right from the top to the bottom. I mean, this is something that I couldn't even begin to imagine us portraying on the human race in our lifetime. Where were we 60 years ago? Who brought this crap around?
Well, and that's
I'd like to have a talk with them.
No, I hear you, and that's the amazing thing about and this is one of those things that's just such a massive issue that I have a hard time covering it, because in my gut, we're still not really sure about the effects, and nobody's really talking about it. But I mean, all the open air testing that's been done, all of the minor failures of power plants all over the globe. I mean, we've all heard of 3 Mile Island. Everybody's heard of Chernobyl. But these kind of leaks and things don't always make the news. This stuff is constantly being poured into the biosphere, as it were, and it's really sickening. And it's funny because I was just talking about this yesterday with Kim. We were discussing, she said to me, you don't eat fish at all anymore. And I said, no, I don't. No, I don't, because I don't know where it's coming from. And, at the very least, in my own head, at least for now, I can't consume seafood because all I keep thinking about is Fukushima. And that's, everything from tuna fish, to deep sea stuff. I don't want to touch any of it, and it's kind of sad, but that's really the only thing that I've been able to personally do, regarding keeping myself away from it. But realistically, I mean, this is already more than 3 years ago that this disaster started, and it's still going.
It's coming up 4 years here real quick, Chuck. And, to me, buddy, a lot of days this brings a sense of rage in me because, like you and like a lot of other people up to a certain point in their lives, we're completely duped about what was actually going on. And here we find ourselves now in a situation where we have all these nuclear power plants. Every one of them we hear about is leaking. We hear what's going on with Hanford. We hear the pollution in the Columbia River. We hear about the pollution in the Atlantic Ocean. We hear of massive die-off of species. I mean, the human race right now, in my world, in my way of thinking, Chuck, we all should be rallying against this because we're only 60 years into the proliferation of nuclear power on the planet. We got to think about the next 200 years. All these little time bombs and measles we laid over top of this surface, they're all going to come back and bite us in the butt. And if the human race doesn't wake up to that, Charles, real quick, I think we're doomed as a species. I don't know at this point in my life if I can say the human race or the planet will survive what we've laid down on top of it, because we said before, Chuck, that the planet never had to deal with the amount of nuclear waste that can be dumped on this planet by 5 or 6 major meltdowns. We've talked about where these things have been built in relation to fault lines that are going to move. I mean, we see geological events right now happening in the world in a magnifying. Look at the Texas earthquake storms the other day. Did you see that? 11 earthquakes in one little area in 24 hours.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, stuff's going on that we can't even begin to put our fingers on, and we're playing with a ticking time bomb. And I don't know if the human race has a lot of time left to deal with it, Charles. And if I can say anything to young people, this is something where you should be focused on. Old people, the human race, talk to your politicians, scream about it. Because we are going to extinct the world. I'm not a fearmonger, Chuck, but I look at just the effects of Fukushima. And we know, I don't have the totals right in front of me, but I studied this for hours one night, and I'm going, well, for Christ's sakes, we've got how many hundreds of these nuclear power plants all over the world? We've got about 38 of the Mark GE Mark Vs that are running on this planet right now. 8 of them are running in the Mississippi River Delta, and these are the worst design in the world for a nuclear power plant. These things are all sitting on top of fault lines. What is going to happen, folks? I mean, what is it going to take? Is it going to take a massive release of radiation and people all of a sudden get sick and think, well, we're going to do something about it now? It's going to be too late, Chuck. We got to wake them up now. We got to get the people just say, hey, this stuff doesn't belong on the earth. Solar power is our answer. We got cars now in Germany that are running by themselves and pumping power into the grids. The technology is there. The human race has to wake up quick. I honestly feel we're going to kill ourselves if we don't, Chuck. I didn't mean to get into a rant, but boy, I think about this every day. I touch on the insanity of it and how we've been duped and how it's brought into society. It's like everything they do. They bring it in slowly. They sell it as propaganda BS, and we buy it. I mean, the power of the mainstream media, and it just blows me away. And the sooner people wake up to it, Chuck, maybe we'll have a chance. But I'm not going to rant anymore. I could talk for hours about this because it absolutely drives me nuts.
Well, yeah, but it's fine, Barry. Listen, man. Look, I'm more than happy to discuss any of this stuff because something does need to be done, and it's one of those things that I don't think people quite have their minds wrapped around the immediacy of it. It's not something that we're going to be able to kick the can down the road anymore. We couldn't do it in the first place, really. I mean. Look, there was a marked increase in background radiation all across the planet from Chernobyl, right? But see, that's something that's almost forgotten nowadays. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like, well, that was then and it's over with. And meanwhile, the half-life on this stuff is, longer than recorded history practically. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There is no way that we're going to get away from this one, or if there's any other ones that end up going off, right. We're stuck. And I mean, I used to live near the one that I do hear mentioned on Nuclear Hot Seat, which is a show that's on UCY here where they discuss this kind of stuff. I used to live right near the one in Forked River, it's right by Forked River, New Jersey. It's actually in a spot called Waretown, and that plant, I was close enough to it that they actually issued us the pills, and we had one of those alarms in the town that they would test every now and then. And again, this thing is right on the coastline. You know what I mean? Which is always unpredictable. We've watched over and over again just what happens from, forget about tsunamis. Let's just think about, your normal series of storms that pound a coastline at any given season.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And these things are built in these really badly chosen spots all over the place. The fault lines, the coastlines, all sorts of places where it almost seems like it's meant to intentionally fail.
Yeah, Chuck, there's no sanity to it at all. There isn't. It's absolute insanity. And like I said, it's only these 60 years in human history since we've really implicated nuclear power on the planet. And we look at the effects now. And I ask people to look at the next 200 years. I mean, sure, we're not going to be here, but, your legacy is determined on what you leave for the next generation. And that's never been so true of a statement to make. The legacy we're leaving right now is something I wouldn't want to leave on anybody. And yet we've done it. We've been duped. And I feel a real urgency to wake people up to this particular issue because it is something I believe will exterminate all life on this planet. The planet's never dealt with it before. Maybe it has. Maybe we're not aware of it, but I'm not aware of any extinction events on the planet that could encompass this much radiation. So it absolutely is something I try not to dwell on too much, but I keep thinking about my children and my grandchildren and what we're leaving for them. So that's why I speak my voice on it all the time, buddy.
No, and I hear you, man. I'm telling you, I really wish I had more connections to people that were, more anti-nuclear activists. I'd be more than happy to go through this stuff and discuss about, solutions regarding this with some people. But I really just I don't happen to swim in those circles at this point. You know what I mean?
I'd like to maybe get Dana on here next week. He's really, really up on nuclear, and the guy's actually very, very intelligent with anything to do with nuclear. He'd like to bring to the public's attention the effects of bunker fuel too. That's something I'm going to be discussing with you here in the next week, Charles. But until I get all my research done on the effects of bunker fuel, the amount of gas and carbons that are being emitted from bunker fuel, I'm not going to talk about it today. But Dana actually brought this subject to my attention. I started doing a little research, and it's something we should look into.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the last time that I got to talk to him only a couple of minutes on that roundtable show because he was supposed to come in a little earlier, but I guess had technical issues or was busy or something. But, tell him, man, I'll be more than happy to devote, at least one full 2-hour show to it. And, I'm sure that we could find a way to go over the material and I'd like to know what I can do. You know what I mean at this point?
What Dana would like to do on one of these shows is really send people to all the links about what exactly nuclear waste is doing to the planet. Like a lot of people don't really understand exactly what's going on, and until they do, I don't think they'll really encompass the passion that you and I feel for the elimination of this thing on the planet. A lot of people just go about their life and everything's fine, but it's going to hit us, and it's going to hit us hard. It's going to break down the food chain. I honestly believe that, along with all the other things that are happening. It's just another piece in the puzzle. But it's something I feel real urgency, and every time I get a chance to sit down and talk to young people, I kind of bring up 2 or 3 points that really get them thinking. I mean, we're looking at the depth of the Pacific Ocean, or possible depth of the Pacific Ocean, from a power source that was simply implemented on the human race 60 years ago. And you got to look back. You got to think about, okay, who brought it in, and why is this doing this, and what can we do, and what are the implications for the future? I think that's one of the most important things we can do, Chuck, is get them thinking about it.
Absolutely. And look, anybody who's listening and wants to join in, I do have the phone lines up, and totally open. We'll go in any direction here, but this is definitely something worthwhile. I just don't have Don't have a good enough background to really speak on it myself, but it is one of those perils that is facing us on a constant, and in an immediate sense. So 718-717-8296. If you want to call in, go right ahead. If you're on my Skype list, just ring me and I'll drop you into the conversation as well. Just for those listening. And see, when we talk about this stuff, of course, I've seen some research done about how the hemp plants can be used to actually try and not really like cleanse the earth, as it were, but there's actually ways that hemp plants can be used to deal with some of the results from the radioactive waste and stuff I saw. Mm-hmm. Have you looked at that stuff yet?
I've looked at quite a few reports on that, quite a few, and they're available. There's actually quite a few links. If you just punch in search engine the effects of the hemp plant on radiated soil, if you punch in that search engine, Chuck, you'll find quite a few links about that particular subject. Japanese scientist right now is working on that, and he's been testing it for the last 3 or 4 years, and those links are on the internet. So go have a look at them.
Yeah, definitely. I would say the same thing. Just punch that phrase in there, and you'll find there's actually some cool videos on it too, where they have.
I sent you that one the other day, eh? Chuck,
yeah, that's right. You sent me one of those the other day. You didn't send me the one with the animation, though. Did you see the one with the animation on it?
No, I didn't see that one, but I did send you that one link where, peer-reviewed study on the on the injection of the cannabinoid and the CBDs and everything that's good in the hemp plant directly into the cancer cells. And every time they do it, the cancer cell dies. So imagine that, eh?
Yeah, well.
Wake up, people. What would you rather do? Go to the doctor and, maybe get the doctor $5,000 for sending you to chemo and then take a bunch of radiation drugs, go home, suffer for 6 months, get a little bit more chemo, get a few more drugs, and then you die. And they basically milk you for everything they can, and you go home.
Yeah, sure.
That's it.
As opposed to just
coming along.
As opposed to just having a couple of plants, in your backyard. You know what I mean?
Drinking chaga.
Or that works as well. I know you love.
Yeah, I sent you links on that one too, didn't I, bud?
Yes, you did, but you know what? I don't have it in front of me. If you want to, go ahead, because I know you got access to the chat room. Go ahead and drop a link to the Chaga resources there in the chat room for them.
Yeah, I can do that in a couple minutes. I'll have to go back in there and I'll pull the link up. If you want to talk to Dylan for a few minutes, I'll give that to you, chat room.
Yeah, I don't know if Dylan's back yet because he said he was stepping out for a minute. So,
and the next subject is 9/11. Is that what you said? That's my favorite subject.
we could go in any direction. I mean, I was literally I had other plans for tonight, but there was a problem with Roger and my other guests, so I just said, you know what, we'll just throw it open and see where it goes. You know what I mean?
It's not like there's a lack of things that could be talked about right now, Chuck.
Oh, absolutely. I'll tell you what. I was looking at blacklisted news. Let's see now. Yep. Published January 20th. This is today. Okay. Yeah, published on blacklisted news. I'll just read from this a little bit, okay? According to information published on and then banned from the internet in Turkey on January 19th, 2014, the prosecutor of Adana Court instructed the Adana Provisional, you know what, I can't even... Gendarmerie Command to stop and search.
You're like me.
3 trucks. Sorry about that.
It needs a laugh. I'm sorry.
Secret. It's okay. It's okay. Secret official documents about the searching of these trucks belonging to Turkey's National Intelligence Service have been leaked online, once again corroborating suspicions that Ankara has not been playing a clean game in Syria. According to the authenticated documents, the trucks were found to be transporting missiles, mortars, and anti-aircraft ammunition. Okay. Let's see. The General Command, which authorized the reports, alleged the trucks were carrying weapons and supplies to the Al-Qaeda terrorist organization. But, yeah, imagine that. But Turkish readers could not see the documents in the news bulletins, and newspapers that shared them because the government immediately obtained a court injunction banning all reporting about the affair. when President Recep Tayyip Erdogan was prime minister, he had said, you cannot stop the MIT truck, you cannot search it, you don't have the authority. These trucks were taking humanitarian assistance to Turkmens. Since then, Erdogan and his hand-picked new prime minister, Ahmet Davutoglu, this is where I really screw names up, have repeated at every opportunity that the trucks were carrying assistance to Turkmens. Public prosecutor Aziz Taksi, I guess, who had ordered the trucks to be searched, was removed from his post, and 13 soldiers involved in the search were taken to court on charges of espionage. Interesting stuff going on over there regarding, Turkey, because everybody keeps forgetting about, what the Turkish military is doing during this whole siege, as it were, and the ISIS crisis, right?
Yeah, there's a million distractions over there that keep you going in all kinds of different directions, so you really never know what's going on. So
right.
There's so much going on behind the scenes.
Just keeping track of some stuff, you can't tell who's on whose side anymore, and we're accidentally dropping boxes of supplies off to ISIS, and that's the United States is actually doing that, right?
So, wow, it was a mistake, guys. We didn't mean to.
Yeah, we didn't
Just
really.
Go back, watch this. There's a football game on. Don't worry about it. Everything's good. We got it under control.
Exactly. Isn't that the way it always goes? So that leads me to another blacklisted article also published. Although the source was from Salon, it was published today on Blacklisted, though. Okay, in the midst of the December holidays news dumping zone, the U.S. Defense Secretary Cooperation Agency, DSCA, quietly notified Congress of several pending arms deals for Iraq. The DSCA is the Pentagon office responsible for coordinating arms agreements between American defense contractors and foreign buyers. Okay, before those thousands of non-boots-on-the-ground troops started hemorrhaging back into Iraq late last year, DSCA personnel made up a significant portion of all U.S. military personnel still there. Its staff members are, in fact, common in U.S. embassies in general. This shouldn't be surprising, since the sales of weaponry and other kinds of war equipment are big business for a range of American companies, and the U.S. government is more than happy to assist. In fact, there is even a hand in foreign governments through the buying process. The DSCA operates under a mission statement which says, U.S. may sell defense articles and services to foreign countries and international organizations when the President formally finds that to do so will strengthen the security of the U.S. and promote world peace. While the Pentagon carries out the heavy lifting, actual recommendations on which countries can buy U.S. gears are made by the Secretary of State and then rubber-stamped by Congress. Interesting, huh? As for countries that can't afford U.S. weaponry, Washington has the Foreign Military Finance Program up its sleeve. This opens the way for the U.S. government to pay for weapons for other countries, only to promote world peace, of course, using your tax dollars, which are then recycled into the hands of military-industrial complex corporations. Iraq's shopping list. Here's part of what the U.S. is getting ready to sell to Iraq right now. 175 M1A1 Abrams main battle tanks. 15 Hercules tank recovery vehicles. You can't have a tank without the tow truck. 55,000 rounds of main gun ammunition for the tanks. Okay, the ammo needed to get the biggest bang for your bucks. And what will all that firepower cost? Just under $3 billion. Keep in mind that these are only the most recent proposed sales when it comes to tanks. In July, for example, General Dynamics, there's that company again, received a $65.3 million contract to support the existing Iraq M1A1 Abrams program. In October, the U.S. approved the sale of $650 million in M1 tank ammunition to that country. There have also been sales of all sorts of other weaponry, from $579 million worth of Humvees and $600 million in howitzers and trucks to $700 million worth of Hellfire missiles. There are many, many more examples. Business is good. Well,
did I tune into comedy TV here or something, man? Am I on the right station here?
Yeah, well, and that's the fun part, is that this does seem like, we'd be making this up, doesn't it?
It does. I'm okay. What can I say about that, Charles? Everything you just told me, I would believe, because we know what's going on inside the U.S. government, how they're undermining and how they propaganda to corrupt the public. It's just another example. This is going on all over the place, Charles. And you know what? It can't be true, because I didn't see it on CNN, buddy.
Yeah, really. I mean, and
how come we never hear about any of this stuff on CNN? Charles?
Yeah, you notice that, right? All we hear there is that, the radicalized Westerners are going to pull off more lone wolf attacks, in various places, all over the place. Now, have you noticed, by the way, that the whole French thing has now sort of blossomed into a much larger scale event? Now there's all these sort of interconnected points at which Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Anwar al-Awlaki, the connection to the underwear bomber, they're throwing it all into one big martini shaker, as it were, and feeding it to everybody with a little purple Kool-Aid, looks like.
Hey, they are, Charles. They're ramping it up. I mean, this is just another false flag, right? And that's what I see it as, and it's just part of the agenda. We're seeing some major events going on right now on this planet, Charles. We really are, especially with the American dollar and the moves against it, with China and Russia, and what they're doing to fight back against the Americans over this oil war. Man, there's a lot of things going on. And we see things ramping up really, really hard right now, buddy. Really hard. So I don't know what they're going to do next. I really don't. I'm kind of sitting back here going, wow. Every day.
Yeah, I'm looking at something in the chat room, by the way, going back to the whole nuclear issue. Jules posted in the chat room, TB Hawaii coral, the worst scientists have ever seen, says a professor. It's like a ghost town. We would not typically see entire colonies bleached ever. A government map of maximum bleaching alert area in Pacific mirrors Fukushima plume model since 2011. And she actually posted a video there of that. I don't know if you saw that in the chat room.
No, I didn't, but I've been actually talking. I'm waiting for Dylan to come back in so I can run around here and find that link, because I got to go back and I got to punch up. I went out of the chat room there for a few minutes and I got to get back there, but I want to post that link on Chaga, but I'll go take a look at that one. But you know what, Charles? We knew 3 years ago when this thing, or 4 years ago when this started, that it had to have an effect on the ocean. The fact that it's dumping every day in the ocean, and we haven't heard the end of Fukushima. The government's got a complete clampdown on any information coming out from Japanese citizens. You can go to jail if you talk about Fukushima in Japan today. The information we're getting is from outside monitoring, but my understanding of Fukushima is that we aren't over and we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. As far as I can understand, Charles, I'm not a scientist, but I read what Dr. Helen Caldicott, I just listened to her 2-hour seminar on Fukushima. That's on YouTube. I have a great deal of respect for what that lady says. She is on top of this. And what we're going to see in the next couple of years, of course, this radiation is going to affect the bottom of the seafood first. It's going to affect the bottom of the ocean first. That's why this year our scallops died off. Our sardine industry collapsed this year. There was no sardines. The commercial fishery went out. This is documented on mainstream media. They went out. No sardines. You can walk the beaches in British Columbia now, and I did this with Dana when we went out into Zodiac. And Charles, years ago, I could go to Lucy Island, get into shallow water where I can see the bottom, and you will see hundreds of starfish. You'll see all kinds of stuff growing on the bottom. It's not there, my friend. And I am not a fearmonger. I saw this with my own eyes. I'm not saying it's dead, but Prince Rupert Harbor, you cannot find a starfish. I defy you to find a starfish. 5 years ago, they were everywhere. It's the bottom of the food chain that's being attacked first. And, you know, there's a lot of people going out there, oh, there's nothing going on with Fukushima. The government would tell us about it. You're a fear-monger, but now it's starting to be discussed. It was brought up in an article. These people are starting to bring the public attention to it. Like Alaska right now just issued another little statement about it. That one I was reading, and we know California is getting bombarded, and the plume is going to magnify, and there's no end to it. So what are we going to do? Why isn't every resource on this planet right now being directed to solving this problem? Why?
But, yeah, see, that's what amazes me is that we are busy, you know, trying to stabilize Iraq and you know, wondering if you know, if we need to worry about the Ukraine and all this kind of stuff. It seems to me as though it would be in the self-interest of every nation on the planet to put their 2 cents in, you know, regarding trying to contain or deal with this ongoing disaster. You know.
Exactly, Charles. I mean, what good's the land going to do if we can't live on it? What good's this whole planet if we can't live on it? What good's the new car you're buying? What's that going to do to you in 5 years when there's no food in the stores? And we see a collapse, and we all know that the die-off of the honeybee has been documented. We know that agricultural circles, my understanding of agricultural circles, it's done pretty well on a four-year cycle. And it was about 4 years that we really started documenting the die-off of the honeybee. That's going to have major effects on our food production. We see what glyphosate doing to our environment all over the planet. I mean, it's just destroying the biosphere. I mean, the human race really is getting to a situation that they really have to wake up to all these different things because they are all connected, Charles. We know that. And that's hard for some people to understand. And you don't try to get into the rabbit holes right away. But if people really look at everything that's going on and the people behind it, the connections to the people, they all come together. At the top, they all come together. That's a deep hole to go into, Charles, and we can't go there tonight, but that's what I have found in my life, that everything that's going on right now has been supported by another faction in government, but the agenda is always the same. I know you've seen the same thing. That's why I call my show The Big Puzzle, because I couldn't come up with a better idea.
No, and it makes perfect sense. And yeah, let me remember to say that. You can catch Barry on The Big Puzzle on Shake and Wake on Sundays, and coming soon to other networks. I know that as well. But man, oh man, and it's just amazing to me that very few people are focused on this for certain. But you know, it's just common sense that tells you that there's a problem here. Because if it starts to kill off, okay, so it's what, just the bottom feeders, big deal. No, it doesn't work that way. This stuff, you know, goes right up the ladder and eventually reaches right out of the ocean because there's plenty of animals that survive based on what's in the ocean.
All life begins at the bottom of the ocean, Charles. All life on the planet.
Right.
Anybody knows how our ecological systems know that the bottom of the ocean feeds the smaller fish, that feed the bigger fish, that feed the whales and the shark and the dolphins, and feed our seabirds, that feed our bears, that feed our coyotes. That it's going to go. It's inevitable. It's going to go right through the food chain because, like I said, everything starts at the bottom, and that's where we're seeing the effects of Fukushima the most.
And the other weird thing that's going to start to happen here, I mean, the more we have these die-offs, is we're going to see, you know, land animals not having enough to eat, so they're going to start starving. They're going to start behaving in different ways, I guarantee you. You know, they're either going to be starving or they're going to be sick, one or the other. You know,
well, we've seen more cougars in Terrace and Thornhill this year than ever before recorded. So I don't know why the cougars are coming into town. But Thornhill's had numerous sightings. Rosswood has had numerous sightings all around the community here. It seems like the cougars are, for some reason, coming into the communities. Now, I wonder what's going on, Charles. I don't see any birds. I don't see anything like I used to see here on the North Coast. And like I've been up here for 35 years of my life now, and I see changes. And it tears me apart, buddy. It really does.
Yeah, and you know, and I'm sure you're not really eating fish at this point either.
No, it's out of my diet now, buddy, and I've lived on it for up to about 32 years. I mean, up to about 2 years ago when I really became aware of this, I got seafood out of my diet, which, boy, I didn't think I'd ever be able to say that in my life, man, because I live on halibut, I live on salmon, I can it every year, and that's all gone now. I mean, wow, man, wow. Wake me up. Beam me up, Scotty. Get me out of here, please.
Yeah, I didn't expect that either. And I mean, I you know, I've lived on the East Coast of the United States most of my life. I've lived in other parts of the United States, but I mean, seafood is a huge part of the diet. up and down the coast. You know what I mean? And it's just, people think, well, the East Coast fish is okay, but it's not.
Okay,
In my estimation. Hey, Dylan.
can you hear me without any background noise?
No, you sound like you're crumpling up tissue paper, but now it's stopped.
Okay, so that issue's still there.
There we go. You're okay now.
Okay, I was trying to get it fixed.
Ah, well, almost. But we were talking about seafood, man. Are you eating any seafood, Dylan?
No.
Yeah, because we're talking about the Fukushima deal, and and how this stuff is, has obviously already made its rounds around the planet. And he's seeing the these tremendous changes in the ecology where he's at. I mean, the sardines are not out there. That's another thing I miss. I used to love sardines, man. I can't eat any of this stuff, though. I can't do it in good conscience. And, yeah, it's been about 2 years for me, too, Barry.
Mm-hmm. Well, unfortunately, Charles, it doesn't matter if we cut seafood out of our diet now. It doesn't. It's only a matter of time before it filters to the top, and it's not going to be something we can avoid. Sure, the East Coast, maybe the Atlantic Ocean isn't showing as many effects. I've done studies on the nuclear waste they dumped in the Atlantic, and they still are to almost this day dumping nuclear waste directly in the ocean. And starting to look at the effects on that. It's just a matter of time, man, before these barrels all disintegrate, and we have tons of radioaction on the bottom of the ocean. I mean, what are we doing, guys? What is the human race doing to itself? It's a question that I just cannot begin to answer, Chuck. I really can't. And like I said, a lot of people don't understand. Maybe they don't understand the urgency of what we're looking at in the next 30 or 40 years of human existence. And maybe some people don't care. About myself, man, like I said, I come back to this thought that, I've been duped in my life, and now I'm aware of it. And we have to do everything we can to try and correct the problems. It's our legacy, Charles. It really is.
No,
it's not a very nice one.
Absolutely, and it's one of those things that, like I said, I would invite anybody who's got solutions, who's looking to make changes or whatever regarding this. Anybody who's in a capacity with any of these organizations, it's anti-nuclear. I'd be more than happy to have them on and discuss what it is we can do.
Well, we have the solutions, Charles. We have the solutions, buddy, but they're being held up. I honestly believe that right now, if the human race was allowed to implement the solutions that are available to us, and that if every scientist in the world took their minds off developing weapons, and if the money spent on weaponry was all of a sudden turned into mass production of hemp plants, mass production of naturals, implementing the hemp plant, Charles, honestly, all through our society, instantly, we could start dismantling the nuclear power plants. We could start putting all our heads together and say, what are we going to do with all the nuclear waste that we've already generated? That, to me, if I was president of the world, Charles, that would be right on the very top of my list. Because if we don't have a planet to live on in the future, and I keep thinking, like I said, Charles, it's just only been less than 60 years since this new wonder was brought to the human race of nuclear power, the most insane way to boil water ever conceived. And we have all the answers, buddy. I mean, look at the solar programs in Germany. Look at what all these free energy inventors are looking at around the world. Those are the solutions that the public has really got to start focusing their attention on and push back against this corporaticity that's absolutely doing nothing but destroy us. And my prayer every day, Charles, is that people start to pay attention to that, that we have the answers. And the answers, the only way we're going to get them, we can't get it from the government. It has to start at a roots level, a grassroots level, where you're talking to your neighbor, you're talking to your friends, you open up and say, there is a few things I wouldn't mind discussing with you, and hit on some articles or issues that really are starting to affect their lives, because it is affecting all our lives now. And we have to get conversations going, Charles. That's the one thing I see missing in society, the divisions put into us by the corporates to be. And they're really manifesting themselves now. As a society, we've been divided in many, many ways. And there's an old saying, if you divide a society, you can conquer that society. Well, I don't think it's ever been truer, buddy. What do you think?
No, absolutely. This is the key point here, is that they do keep us, occupied with other problems, while every last one of us will be affected by things like this, and we're not focused on it. And but part of the thing that does worry me also is that even if we do put a stop to this today and we start producing a whole lot more hemp across the planet, and we were to shut down every single one of these facilities, at midnight tonight, it's still not going to heal the damage that's been done yet. There's a lot of work that's going to have to go into disposing of this stuff and reintroducing it into the biosphere, I guess. There's going to have to be something done to deal with the waste.
I was talking to Shaziz there a couple of weeks ago, and he was really bringing home some information to me about nuclear waste, the fact that it actually has energy. I'm not a scientist, but he explained to me, and I have a great deal of respect for that man. He explained to me in detail exactly what can be done with nuclear waste, that nuclear waste that's now sitting in the ground can be extracted from the ground and turned into heat and energy and have no side effects. And I'd like to get him on your show here, Charles. I'd like your audience to maybe listen to some of the thoughts that this man is putting out, because they are working on solutions. There is solutions to it. But like I said, Charles, it's going to take a mass awakening of the masses. It's going to take all the money that we spend on, a lot of the money we spend on researching pharmaceutical drugs, the billions of dollars spent on pharmaceuticals. If that was all funneled back into research and development on, number one, the hemp plant, because I honestly believe that the hemp plant, sure, we are seeing tremendous devastation, but the hemp plant is also one of the best foods that can be provided and one of the best medicines that will fortify your body to take on the effects of radiation. There's all kinds of naturals in the world that will detoxify your body, but you'll never get them at the doctor's office. And like I said, in the last 6 months, I've experienced that in the last 2 years, where I started putting hemp oil into my body, and then I started taking chaga. And, my body now, I'm feeling better, Charles, than I have felt in years. I'm 6 years old, and every day people are going, well, what's going on? What have you done? Well, I changed my diet. I got away from all the crap. I looked at what naturals can do. And if I could say anything to anybody out there, with the amount of radiation, the amount of heavy metals, the amount of pollution, the amount of chemtrailing going on, it's never been more important for people to explore the benefits of naturals, Charles, because it is making an amazing effect on people. And one other thing I'm going to add, Charles, I know I rant about this a lot, but it's something that comes from my heart, buddy, is that I've noticed that people, as soon as they start getting healthier, their brains start functioning. And they seem to come around and they start to see things for what they are. I think it has a lot to do with the detoxifying effects, the antioxidant effects of chaga, and the effects of cannabis on the receptors in your brain, how all this stuff kind of comes together, and you start seeing things differently, and your brain starts thinking better. And a lot of people said this to us, they start changing their diet, they start doing this and that, and boy, all of a sudden their brain seems to clear up and the cloud disappears. And I don't think that's been a better time in human history for our brains to clear up, because we're all walking around, I won't say us, but a lot of people are walking around in a total zombified state, watching TV, taking the pharmaceutical drugs, eating their aspartame, drinking their fluoridated water every day. It's all affecting us in major ways, and we've got to get away from it, period. Look to the earth, guys. It really has the answers. And that has been so taken away from us in the last 100 years of human history by Big Pharma.
No, absolutely, and of course it's because you have all these petroleum-based medications and things that are really great for the profit margins of the greater corporate interests, as opposed to the very natural and sensible solution that could be offered via the hemp plant, via the cannabinoid system. This is what it's all about. But again, it's just one of those things. I would love to hear these solutions about the waste, because that's one of my biggest concerns, is that if we don't, if we don't figure out a way to deal with the damage that's already been done, even if we stop it all today in, the greatest world possible, we're still faced with, the results of what's already been done,
Exactly.
So definitely I would love to hear all about that, because I haven't heard much about that. See, that's another thing. You don't get this on the science shows out there, and you don't get this on the, what do you call it, the NPRs and stuff like that. Even when they do go into these long, presentations regarding, scientific theories and true world science and all that kind of stuff, they never do get into this kind of subject matter, do they?
Never. Well, of course, it's not to their benefit to ever divulge anything that's beneficial. And when people realize that, they'll start going down the rabbit hole, Charles. I mean, if we really sit back and just, as a rational person, look at a little bit of human history and where our planet was not even 200 years ago, as far as its biosphere, as its ability to feed everybody and provide an abundant life, cancer wasn't a thing that existed. None of the diseases we see in society today existed. It doesn't really take a rocket scientist to really kind of figure it out, to sit back and look at the big picture. And all I've been able to do here in the last little while is get onto what naturals are doing. I'm looking at rose hips now, comfrey, stinging nettle, all these things that I'm looking at the benefits of, and I'm going, wow, rose hips, the highest natural concentration of vitamin C in the world. Vitamin C, they're documenting, has amazing effects on cancer in your body. Simple things like raising your alkaline level. I wasn't aware of that in the past. That's a very simple thing that people can do to fight off cancer. I mean, people get a sentence from the doctor. They go to the doctor. He says you've got cancer. They instantly think they're dead, and that's so far from the truth. It really is, Charles. I would say don't ever get chemo, man. What an insane idea that is.
No, that's
that's beyond insanity.
That's one of those, the cure is worse than the disease kind of deal. And wow, I mean, the horrendous damage being done by stuff like that. Exactly, the treatments are much more brutal on the system than the disease. It's horrendous stuff.
Yeah, I did research one day on the fact, somebody told me this, they made a statement to me that when doctors in British Columbia send you for chemotherapy treatment, they get a check for $5,000. And I kind of laughed, but that's a fact, Charles. When a doctor sends you for chemo, he gets a check from the BC Medical Association, or whoever pays the bills, for $5,000. So what's a doctor going to do? Yeah, a doctor's hypocritical oath when he goes to school is to provide the best care possible for his patient. And doctors aren't stupid people, Charles. They know that this stuff is out there. They've heard of the revolution. They know, and yet they continue to hand out prescriptions like they're candy.
Well, because you correctly called it, even though it sounds incorrect, you correctly said the hypocritical oath. It should be the Hippocratic oath, because it was something based on the Hippocrates. And, of course, the first part of that is do no harm. But the thing is, that's been lost, right? That's been lost. And
yeah, I had the right idea, just got the wrong word, Charles.
No, you had exactly the right idea, and you had the right word, too. It's just that, unfortunately, you are correct. And the thing is, I don't know about getting a check directly for chemotherapy in the United States. I don't know if that's part of the practice here, but I do know for certain that every one of these doctor's offices is given all sorts of kickbacks for making sure that they push each one of the new medications that comes out, making sure that they keep loyal customers regarding, keeping people hooked on all sorts of different chemicals. If you stay with this particular chemical company and their line of stuff, they give you all the little crap for around your office. They buy you lunch. They send you checks. They give you literally like consultant fees and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. And you know what? Prescription drugs now kill more people than heroin and cocaine, and soon to be all illicit drugs combined. So who are the criminals? The world last year, Charles, they made $500 billion on psychotropic drugs worldwide last year. $500 billion on psychotropic.
And I'll bet you that's actually an understatement, because they're probably not including, a whole lot of the places where they say they lost money, because you got to remember, creative bookkeeping exists throughout all these larger corporate interests, right? When they turn around and they sell something that could be worth, $20 million, and they sell it for $5 million, even though it cost them, $100,000 to make, they turn around and say that they lost $15 million. Because, they don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, the bookkeeping always goes that way when it comes to this kind of stuff. So I bet you that that's really a real serious underestimation of what was actually profited.
Yeah, it was kind of like Donald Rumsfeld explaining the bookkeeping on September 10th, 2001 to the nation. that they had. Well, how much did they displace? I think it was. I forget the exact figures, but it was on September 10th, the day before the 9/11 attacks. He went on national TV and tried to explain to the American public that they had misplaced. I forget the exact figure, but it was astronomical, Charles.
Well, it's really irrelevant at this point because the section of the Pentagon that would have been involved in investigating it happened to be hit by a plane, holding up air quotes. And of course, one of the other agencies that might have actually investigated the whole thing or had the files was actually in that other building that fell down on the 11th of September in Building 7, wasn't it?
Yeah, the one that had two little pockets of fire and all of a sudden decided it was going to fall down, man. That was pretty cool. I liked it. I don't know what was in that fire, man, but boy, oh boy, that's pretty impressive display.
Remarkable stroke of luck for Rummy there.
Charles, all person with any kind of sense, any kind of logic, all they have to do, and these pictures are still available on the internet, is take a picture, take a look at Pentagon. 10 minutes after the airstrike, the supposed airliner went into the side of the Pentagon. And you tell me where you see an airplane going into that building. And it's right there in front of your face. I mean, how can people not say, how can they go along with the story, Charles? That is so blatant in your face. I mean, if I know of an airplane that hit that building, there would have been massive devastation. The engines alone were made of titanium. They would have bored holes into that building. But nothing.
Well,
just a government story.
They didn't even scratch the facade, right? No broken windows even. No broken windows even in the approximate area where these things might have been. Well, they got really good windows at the Pentagon.
The tail section, the whole tail, the five-story section, the 5-story tail just disappeared. It didn't hit the building. It decided it was going to fall off on the lawn or something.
Well, it was a remarkable day, just like that plane disappeared in Shanksville, too, So
there are so many things those guys accomplished that day. They were pretty good guys. The terrorists with their box cutters, they defied the greatest air defense system in the world, 4 occasions. I mean, the Pentagon was the most highly guarded building in the world. And a plane came in and hit it? Okay.
Well, in all fairness...
That's just the touch of the iceberg, Carl. I mean, I've studied this for months and months and months, and you have too.
Well, of course.
That's a joke.
In all fairness, though, Barry, I mean, after all, there could have been technological problems, with the equipment that day because, they didn't have very many surveillance cameras on it either at the time.
Well, there was 62, but for some reason the FBI went around in the first hour and they seized all 62 of them. So I don't know. Maybe there was some porno on there or something we weren't supposed to see.
Well, there was nothing of significance on there. Just like who funded it actually wasn't important either.
The rabbit hole is so deep on that, Charles. When you really start going down, you'll find out how everything connected all worked out perfectly that day, and our world has never been the same since. Boy, people that tell me that they still think planes fell into that building and brought them down. They really are either they're brain dead or they refuse to look at the evidence, period. And a lot of people do, Charles. They just refuse to even think that the government would do something like that because it would completely knock them out of their comfort zone. Well, I say to that, it's time you got knocked out of your comfort zone because your comfort zone's not going to be there much longer, my friend.
Yeah, well, I don't know where their comfort zone is because I don't have one anymore. Dylan, are you still with us? I don't know. I don't know if Dylan is still there, but I still see him there, but I don't know. Oh boy, I'll tell you, Barry. It's just some days I got to tell you, it all this stuff gets so overwhelming that it makes me want to take a look at stuff like this, and I'm just gonna have a little bit of fun because I'm already just about an hour and 15 through this show here. Believe it or not. Okay. Somebody passed me something telling me that Barack Obama is going to give his State of the Union address tonight. Mm-hmm. And then in the chat room, I think Jules dropped the State of the Union address drinking game for 2015.
Okay.
I thought this was worth a read. Okay, so, Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States, the general rules of the game are no different from any other drinking game. A drink is either a shot, a good gulp from a beer or cider. Different events call for different numbers of drinks, and all you do is watch the speech and play along. It all goes well, you'll be unconscious by the time they show the other party's response. Okay. This year, President Obama's State of the Union address is scheduled for Tuesday, January 20th, 2015 at 9 p.m. Eastern, so 1 hour after I go off the air. Mm-hmm. It should be broadcast on all major networks and cable, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Now, this is the table of events, as it were. The general blather. The State of the Union is strong, or some version of this requires one drink. The mention of the word hope requires one wistful shot. The mention of the word change requires one drink. Hopeful audacity of yes we can change. Sip of unicorn wine. Okay. Hopey changey. One wishy-washy shot. Progress. One drink. Let me be clear. One drink. Make no mistake, one drink. Okay, foreign policy section. When the word Iraq comes on, one advisory shot. When the word Afghanistan is mentioned, somewhere between 0 and 34,000 remaining shots. Iran, yawn, one shot. Okay, P5 plus 1, 5 plus 1 shots. Cuba, a freshly made, though still not totally clear, Cuba Libre. North Korea, sneak into your neighbor's house, raid their file cabinet, share whatever you find, and take a shot. Syria, one repressive shot. ISIS, ISIL, IS, Islamic State, terrifying terrorist, mother effers, you get the idea. A rapid succession of shots, drunk faster than any observers anticipated you could drink them, while also freaking out everyone around you. Be aware this might lead to you getting bombed. Okay, Davos. 1 if referring to Switzerland, 2 if referring to Seaworth. Nuclear. 1 if he goes with W's, nuclear. Oh, nuclear. Sorry. See, nuclear, one more if he goes with nuclear. Okay, which is the incorrect pronunciation. Domestic policy. Healthcare. Shot of NyQuil. Just kidding. You'd be out for the rest of the week. Healthcare.gov or federal exchanges. One shot of something when you don't know the cost, nor can you figure out the alcohol content of what you're consuming. Okay. Childhood education. Have a juice box. Fair share. Take a fair share of your neighbor's drink. Student debt. Borrow a shot from a friend. Promise you'll really pay it back this time. Recognize that your heirs will be responsible for paying back the shot. Deficit. Finish your drink. Borrow the drink of the person next to you and drink it too. Unemployment. 1. Jobs. 1 if you've been unemployed in the last year. 2 if you're unemployed today. We've been there. Okay. Opportunity. That also is 1 drink. You know, this list goes on, and I'll tell you something. I don't think I could survive this drinking game, Barry. What do you think?
I think I would have been on the floor a while ago, and I'll bet you $2 that he'll use every one of those words tonight, Charles.
Oh, yeah.
He used them in every one of his speeches before, and it will be the exact same duplication. So I don't even know if I want to listen. I will listen because I have to actually put on a little bit of a screen, because every time I see that man talk, I get hit with a stream of verbal diarrhea, and it kind of hits me right in the face. It's kind of like that Exorcist movie where she's sitting on the bed, you know?
Oh, and yeah.
The room comes out and hits you right in the face. Well, every time that man talks, Charles, I feel that way. So I'll try and bear through and listen to his crap tonight. I want to hear what he's putting across the American people. I don't think the American people are going to buy it much longer, Charles.
I think he's actually losing support even among the sleepwalkers at this point. I mean, this is pretty funny. I'll just rattle off the list without giving you the drinks really quick, because think about how ridiculously drunk you'd get if you had enough liquor to support this game. Okay. Wow. Unemployment. Okay. Jobs, opportunity, poor, middle class, wealthiest Americans, recovery, infrastructure, Snowden, marijuana. Woof. Healthcare, immigration, education, banking, tax. Judaism. Okay. If he refers to the minimum wage increase, refers to a tax increase, or asking to pay more, or asking some to pay more, criticizes Congress, adds a color qualifier to jobs, e.g. green jobs or blue-collar jobs, uses an anecdote to defend a policy, makes a joke if you only know it's a joke because Obama laughed at it himself, sets a long-term objective or vision to be met after his current term is up, mentions a country that you can't find on a globe, talks about striking a balance between privacy and security, mentions a world leader. I'm telling you, man, it would take 10 of me to get through this game.
I think you just gave a speech for him there, Charles.
Yeah, almost.
You have access. You must have had access to the script.
If you recut everything I just said, you could probably recreate the entire State of the Union address, right? Oh man.
Oh man. Anyways,
sorry. I thought that was.
No. It kind of hits it right on the nail, doesn't it? I mean, this guy is an absolute joke, and all I can hope, he's a puppet, Charles, and we know that he's not the one pulling the strings. He's just reading the lines, and everything he's doing is being mandated to him by much more powerful people, I believe. So hopefully that puppet will fall, and the rest of them will fall with him, because if Obama falls, there is going to be a lot of people behind him. I know the National Liberty Alliance is making waves across the country now, Charles. I don't know if you've been following what they've been doing, but they are making waves, my friend. Anybody out there isn't familiar with their work, I invite you to go to the nationallibertyalliance.org and see what they're up to, and the challenges, and the common law grand juries that are now in effect, and the challenges that are being made all through America against the court system. They are really, really stirring up some crap. Okay, so go have a look, guys. You get a minute.
Yeah, I was told to take a look at that at the end of the month. I was told to look at it.
Yeah, there's some real. I talked with John quite a bit, Charles, and all I can say is there's some really, really heavy stuff going to be put in front of all the justice system in the United States of America, and the whole hope is that this will stir enough public attention that it will be forced to be exposed on mainstream media. They can't turn their back on this forever. And I honestly feel when the American people really know what's going on inside the judicial system, there will be a cry. And hopefully that comes down, buddy, because it would be a major strike against the corporaticity that's going on.
See, you'd think so, but I don't hold out a lot of hope for it. I got to be honest with you, because I think all that'll happen here is we'll see one puppet replaced with another puppet. You know.
Yeah, we got to get to the bottom of the puppet hole. That's the problem.
Yeah, definitely, and dismantling the entire system that perpetuates this two-party charade is what needs to happen here. I mean, simply getting rid of the blue puppet for the red puppet, it's still a sock monkey. It doesn't really matter. You know what I mean?
But in the same level, Charles, that they bringing to the public attention just what's going on inside the judicial system. What's going on inside the judicial system has a great impact on what's going on in America right now. And sure, maybe this won't go anywhere, but I kind of feel the other way. I feel that if the American public now kind of get an ear of what's going on, it will lead them on a journey. And maybe it's just attacking the judicial system, but like I said before, they're all tied together. I mean, the judicial system's tied in with the corrupt banks or the prison systems that are putting people in jail for the heroin that the U.S. government is bringing into the country. I mean, it's just a big circle of these people. The way I see it, just a big party every year. They get together, and all these people get together, and they're going to discuss everything. They plan it out, and boom, there it is, right in front of you. That's the way I see it, anyways, Charles. It's a small thing, but it could be a monumental thing because what's going on inside the judicial system is absolute total corruption. So, anyways, I'm hoping that it goes somewhere, Charles. I believe if the American people got behind this, maybe we could turn it around. I don't want to say that, hey, all hope is lost. I don't wake up every day saying, hey, all hope is lost. I believe that if the American people really, really knew the threats to their future and exactly what the implications of what's going on right now, we would see the change. But there we run into these hurdles all the time of people being brainwashed and people zombified and distracted. And those are the hurdles I think we have to get over this year, Charles. I really do.
No, you're right. You're right, and it's true. I don't feel totally defeated. It's just that when I've seen these actions take place, because when you have a grand jury impaneled, or when you have a grand jury impaneled, there's a lot of things that can be done during that time that don't necessarily relate to the agenda of the prosecutors and all that. You can actually, if you go about through proper channels, you can get different things introduced. There was even a movement at one time to try and get the JFK case reopened via one of these grand juries that had nothing to do with it except that it happened to be in the right place,
Right.
in Dallas, Texas, right? And it's a possibility, but it's one of those things that would have to be done like all over the place in order to really shake up the system.
Well, that's what they've done with the National Liberty Alliance before all these moves were being made, Charles. Like I said, go have a look at what they've done, look at some of their documentaries, but they put all these pieces in place, made sure it had all the I's dotted and the T's crossed prior to making approaches to the judicial system. And like I said, in the next couple of weeks, you were told, I know there's lots being spoke about it right now, the numbers are growing exponentially. People are really starting to grab this. I feel it's the last hope, really, for America. I mean, we have to wake people up to what's going on in the system, how that's all tied together with what's going on in the rest of our world. It really is just a big circle. And sure, here we are talking about this. We talked about all kinds of different things tonight, but really they all come back to the same thing, Charles. They're trying to kill us, and they're trying to break us, and they're trying to make us slaves.
Well,
and that's the bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, like I said, I'm not one of these people that holds out, a huge amount of hope for the one thing, but at the same time, I do believe it is possible to shake this off. I don't know if this is the right mechanism. I mean, time will tell. I do know that, that's what they did. They actually organized this so that they would be taking a lot of different people to task all at once, sort of a truly coordinated attack, but in a legal sense. With the recourse of the of the legal system behind it. This is what the move is about, and I'm still waiting to get like a full rundown on all this. And I've read about some of it, but I just don't feel qualified to speak about it yet.
Right. And I'll say the same thing, that I'm not 100% on everything that's going on, but I have watched the numbers grow. I know what the moves have been already. And everything being done by the National Liberty Alliance is to the letter of the law of the Constitution of the United States of America. And I believe what's going to happen here in the next couple of weeks is going to shake some people up, Charles. And I just hope it does. I mean, we got to keep attacking them, man. We got to push back in every aspect of our life, whether it be something simple like not supporting corporations when they shop, stop buying fast food, look at your diet, look at your health, look at your children's health. All these things we can all push back every day, and you just got to use our imagination and come up with ways. Man, I do. That's why I'm so glad to hear about this Shagga path, because it's one way that I can keep a few people out of the doctor's office, Charles. And that sounds like a little thing to you. Maybe that sounds like a little thing to me. It's monumental. Because the domino effect is unbelievable.
Absolutely, and let me ask you about this, because you remember the troops that were sent over to deal with the whole Ebola thing in Africa, right?
Yeah.
Well, I saw on the local news here, but did not see it in a national sense, that a lot of these guys are starting to return now. They're cycling back. Notice there's no sort of panic about whether the virus is going to be spread once again, or the exposure is out there and all this other stuff. I mean, I was literally seeing, like the families celebrating the returns of troops in North Carolina here. Have you seen anything about that?
Well, it's something I haven't got up on, Charles. So I'm a little in the dark about that one.
Mm. I just found it interesting that we had singular healthcare workers coming back, from dealing with being right there in the midst of the epidemic, as it were, in Africa.
Right.
And all the panic about it, and trying to isolate that one nurse, and trying to quarantine is the word I was looking for. Quarantine the
Right.
one nurse who was defiant, and all the panics, and a guy got thrown off a plane for making a joke about Ebola after he coughed, and all this other stuff went on.
Well, yeah, I have noticed, Charles. A couple months ago it was ramped up all over the mainstream, and now I see nothing about it. Right? You don't even hear about it now on mainstream TV. I make a Charles. You know what, Charles? I make a point of tuning in and listening to mainstream every day for about half an hour on the news just to see what they're putting out, and then I go to alternatives and I go to Sun News and I try and listen to what these guys are saying. But Ebola hasn't been talked about now on the news for what, couple 3 weeks. I've heard nothing. So what happened? Did it all just all of a sudden disappear?
Well,
We know
see,
what's going on, Charles.
well, that was the thing, and I said it when it was going on. I said, what's going to happen here is that this is going to ramp up, and as soon as it's not useful, when they have something else to run the distraction game
It'll
on,
disappear.
it'll disappear, and nothing will be said about it again, regardless of so many hundreds of people died here, so many hundreds of people died there.
I
You
know.
know,
Panic, panic, panic.
panic,
They
panic,
got
panic, panic.
they got a new panic. It's the panic of the week, Charles. These guys have got what they call the panic of the week club, and every week it's a new panic.
You got it.
They keep us in a constant state of fear, constant disarray. Can't keep up with what's going on. You hear all these reports. Even somebody in normal mainstream society now is hearing all kinds of different things through coffee shop conversations. They don't know what to make of it, man. I mean, they are the masters of distraction. They are the masters at brainwashing. They've been doing it for so many years, and they have perfected it. And boy, people wake up to that, Charles. It pisses me off, buddy. It really does. I mean, some days I just want to go out and stick my head out the window and say, "Wake up," But I don't know if they're going to listen. I really don't.
No, I hear you, and it's a frustration. It is, but
It is. It's unreal. And the other thing, Charles. The people don't realize that. I noticed this in my life. Boy, the emotional baggage that we carry on our shoulders. Somebody said that to me. He said, "You start going down these rabbit holes, Barry, and it's going to really, it's going to affect you." And it has affected me, man. Some days I don't even want to look at this. I want to just pretend I don't know anything about it. Turn it all off. It's not really happening in my world because I find it drains me emotionally, buddy. It really does. Some days I don't even have the energy. Today I feel charged up. I have lots of things I wanted to say and things on my head, but some days, buddy, I don't even want to look at this stuff. You probably feel the same way. You must. It drives me nuts, man, what's going on in this world. I look at the thousands of children that are dying and suffering, and they don't mean shit. I mean, they're kids, they're children of other people, and they love them just as much as we love our children, yet this goes on every day, and we close our eyes to it under the sake of national security so the banksters can get rich. It just drives me nuts, Charles. I mean, how many children have died to make a buck? And the suffering in these families. And wouldn't you want to come back and kill the people that did that to your children? And then we wonder why America now is the most despised nation on the earth, yet it's not the American people. The American people are good, wholesome people. Most American people, Charles, are really, really good people. The people I've met down in the States, really good, wholesome people. You love your children. We really have to start addressing that, guys. We really do.
well,
Like I said, okay, go ahead, Charles.
Well,
I was going to share another thought. Go ahead.
no problem. I totally understand it, and this is one of the things, and I think that's what the problem is regarding the whole Fukushima thing, is that since it is so sort of far out of our line of sight, in this hemisphere, it's easily ignored because it's not something that's exploding in front of us on a daily basis. I'm kind of amazed that there isn't a whole lot more of it coming out of Japan. Complaints. I mean, people have to be getting sick. There has to be a lot of damage being done to the, to everything over there. You know what I mean?
All internet communications out of Japan is being monitored. Okay, if the Japanese people speak against Fukushima, they can go to jail. If a Japanese newspaper publishes anything about Fukushima, they can go to jail. The government put a complete clamp down on anything coming out of Japan, Charles. That's a fact. So what we're hearing about, what we're seeing, the results we're seeing are strictly outside the Japanese. But we know that they're suffering, buddy. their cancer rates. I mean, information gets out all the time, and I know their cancer rates are going right through the roof.
And I've actually joined Cy Girl into the discussion. How you doing tonight?
Well, obviously, from the discussion that you guys have been having over the last 45 minutes or so, I'm not exactly in the cheeriest mood. I think it just really it fleshes out and colors in and pretty much confirms a lot of what I'm getting from a lot of different sources. I was going to ask your guest to comment on the sailors dying apparently of radiation sickness from the USS Ronald Reagan. The reason why I raise that is because I feel like I just don't. I understand how they control the media. I understand how they can fool people and how trauma-based mind control works. But I don't understand how they could keep out of the media the idea that the facts that these sailors on the USS Ronald Reagan that happened to be in the area and were there to rescue people are apparently sick and dying of radiation-induced cancers. I don't get the. You understand? I don't get the fact that there doesn't seem to be an awareness of this or a concern about this. It's freaking me out because I would have thought it'd be like a headline story. Am I?
Well, it should be. It should be. But go ahead, Charles. Let me just make one quick thought to her.
Yeah, good.
The rabbit holes involved in this whole situation are very deep, and what a person has to look at. Okay, so all these sailors are getting sick. I'm sure the government has approached every one of these families. There's been a ban on anything talked about it, and their families have been paid off, and that apparently will end the suffering. And I'm sure if you went and really looked into it, that's probably what's going on, because you're right. This should be headline news that just that little bit exposure to what's going on in Fukushima has caused this sickness in these sailors. Well, it only begs us to think what's going on with the rest of the world, what's going on in Japan right now that they're stopping us from hearing about. The fact that mainstream isn't bringing out the reports on the ocean that are absolute undeniable facts. But like I said earlier just the fact that the sardines have disappeared. Last year there was no sardines. That is a monumental statement as far as the future of the existence of this planet. It sounds like a tiny little thing, but that represents so much food in our ocean. Now it's gone. We see our sea life just dying off at incredible rates. Nobody seems to care. Why don't they care? Why don't they address this? Well, it's a really dark and deep question, and it scares me when I go and look at the answers. It really does, because these people are not, in my life, in my world, these people aren't real people. They're either demonic, or they're possessed, or they're from space, or however you want to describe them in your world, but they're not real human beings, because they have no apathy, they have no concern, because all this stuff is fact now, and they just continue to ignore it. They continue to block it from public information. I think if the whole world knew exactly what was going on, Cygirl, that we'd all be screaming and feel the frustration that you're feeling right now over one simple little issue. Well, that issue is magnified so many times in the realms of government. And I just invite you to go look down some more rabbit holes, because you'll get more peed. Go ahead, Charles.
Well, see, but this is the thing: disappearing the whole story with the USS Ronald Reagan down the memory hole is really helpful for keeping this sort of out of the consciousness, because after all, this would be a really relatable story if it was being covered, on a mass scale. And here again, this is where the alternative media fails also. Because we sort of talked about this, when a little ways back, but we've dropped the ball. Nobody's discussing it anymore. I couldn't even tell you where this stands at this point. Based on what I knew about it then. I mean, we all know the story about the ship not being able to dock after it had been exposed. They went over there to try and help immediately after the event and all that stuff, and all these guys got sick. These guys were out on the deck when they were absolutely not being protected. They went directly into pretty much a radiation storm, and all this stuff. But that would make it a way more relatable story to the people in the U.S., and I think that's exactly why that's being suppressed at this point, because if it was a whole lot more relatable, if it wasn't something they could sort of put out of sight, out of mind, and it was thought about in that way, there'd be a lot more people up in arms about it, and not completely ignoring it years after the event and still in progress,
Exactly. Oh, we'll hear a public outcry when people do really start understanding this. There will be a public outcry to the government why it wasn't brought to their attention earlier, Charles. But like I said, I honestly feel if we don't, in my realm of thinking, if we don't deal with these issues with nuclear in the next 5 or 10 or 15 years of human history, they will really manifest themselves. And like I said, we know that the ocean is dying, and they continue to turn their back on it. Boy, if I heard that and I was in government, I'd be investigating it right to the tips, and I'd find out what I could do to stop it. Excuse my language.
Listen, and I'll just say this.
That out.
It's all right. You know what? It's one of these situations where I would say it's one of it's a thing that if we don't deal with it, it will certainly deal with us. And I don't know, Cygro, that's kind of the best take I have on that, but I don't even know where that whole story stands at this point. Last I knew, this whole thing was under investigation, and they were looking into it, and nothing to see here, move along. That's pretty much where it got left in my mind. I mean, has there been any new information that you've heard about?
Well, they've locked up the records, and they've now claimed national security to withhold FOIA requests, satisfying FOIA requests. In other words, they're definitely covering. It's a massive effort to cover it up, but of course they can't because the families are obviously. It appears also that in some cases there's been secondary effects from the exposure on children. On members of the immediate family. That's how severe the exposure was in the case of somebody. One guy, he says, my body is literally shrink. Like one leg is an inch shorter than his body's literally shriveling up from radiation. Another one has leukemia. I mean, it's so overwhelming that it's one of these things where I think people have to go. It's like not looking up at the sky. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. So my thinking on this is not a knowledge thing. It's not an intellectual thing. It's a moral cowardice thing where people just don't want to deal with it because they're in such denial. It's sad to say, notwithstanding what you guys have been talking about in terms of the effect on the food chain, we got to face the fact that to talk about the oceans dying and to talk about the effects on the food chain remains, this is an awful thing to say, remains an intellectual abstraction to many or most of the people that we ultimately need to reach. So how do we be impolite about it without totally freaking them out? How do we get in their face?
Power in numbers.
Well,
I
disagree with that. I think it's not about numbers. Numbers only matter when something reaches critical mass.
Right.
Before that, it's about the quality. It's about the quality of the vibe, and it's about what resonates with what's happening, with everything else that's happening in people's lives, economic collapse, everything else.
Right, but in a strategic sense, I think that the fact that you bring up the USS Ronald Reagan and the idea that there are these individuals who are being affected and affecting their families and that they're getting sick and everything else, this is a whole lot more relatable to the individual. You know what I'm saying? So actually, you've got the solution in hand right there. As I think that we need to start picking up that kind of story. And start telling it from that perspective. See, that's why I said, I'm surprised more has not leaked out of Japan as it is. But I guess I shouldn't be, because if we really did see what the human toll was like, if we saw families suffering, if we saw children suffering, if we saw, the human toll, as it were, right in our face, this is actually what's happening, then it would be something that we'd have to maybe consider, empathizing for a moment. I know that's a real scary concept for a lot of people, but, empathizing would be the thing that might actually happen if we brought it more, put more of a human face on it, as opposed to talking about what seems to be like an abstract intellectual exercise. And she's exactly right. That's why I love when you join in, Cy Girl. I'm telling you, you always bring up like a seriously solid, coherent point that makes me rethink just about everything. So I just want to tell you, I love it when you drop in on me.
Well, I have to take advantage of that moment to emphatically disagree, to sharply rebuke you for something you said.
Go ahead.
Well, you referred to I don't know, UCY and others as having failed. I must make clear that UCY is most emphatically not a failure, but a brilliant success at this time, along with the dozens, soon to be hundreds and thousands of other new media sources, which who I view as cadres of an army, as the officers of an army. So you have what you have already achieved. Do you understand the success that you have already achieved? And at UCY in particular, so this is my moment to make a pitch to all of our listeners out there to do whatever you can. I know people are suffering. There's material difficulties, but people have to step up, pitch in, sustain this new media and the brilliant people who are associated with it and who are working hard with it to keep it going and make we have the means to make something like the predicament of these sick and dying USS Reagan sailors. We have the means to make that go viral, to really, I hate to say it, rub it in people's faces. But that's what you guys do. I think you do it intuitively. I think you're all so, in this sense now, you are now so politically mature that it's like you don't even have to talk about the details in many respects. We already know what we're up against, don't we? I mean, is this, I hate to use this phrase, but I have to tell you, it is now mainstream, extinction level event. What am I darkening am I darkening this discussion by using that phrase? I'm not scientifically qualified to know. At what point do we begin, or do we want to say a potential extinction level event that can still in some way be contained or ameliorated? This is where I'm at with Fukushima.
Well, either one is appropriate in my opinion. And you know what? Again, you're right. I shouldn't say that the alternative media has entirely failed, but I do think that we still need to do better. We still need to do better here. There is always room for improvement, and I'm not seeing exactly the type of stuff that you're discussing here really being brought out in a lot of places. Like I said, I mean, Nuclear Hot Seat, if you want to tune into them, they always cover this kind of stuff. They're right on top of it. But but there are not a lot of general or mixed sort of programs where they don't have a particular focus on a particular issue, where they're not really covering this anymore. Like hardly anybody is. That's just the way that's what I've observed. Perhaps I'm wrong. I can't observe everything, and I'm definitely not the master of observation that you are, Cy Girl. So I do also tip my hat to you there.
Well, American mainstream media, whatever that means now.
Right.
Let alone alternative. These terms are rapidly going to be obsolete, I think. At some point, the only people using them will be dying baby boomers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We look at the numbers, Girl, with mainstream in the audiences, and we see them dropping exponentially, and we see alternative media's numbers going right through the roof. What I said earlier about, frustration of people not waking up, like I'm referring in my life to the mass awakening that needs to happen on this planet to make the changes. And I don't see it happening yet, and that frustrates me because so much is happening that if people aren't aware of it, then they really are either completely brainwashed or just don't care. And I don't know how somebody can't care. I mean, there's so many things that we have to deal with, and yet people still aren't getting it. And I don't know, at this point in our life, I think we have to kind of slap them nicely in the side of the face with love. I mean, that sounds silly, but that's what we have to do. We have to bring people to reality, whatever it takes, an opportunity to share a thought, some kind act. A kind act opens doors all the time for me to share my thoughts with people. And I look at them with my heart and my eyes and say, I don't know you, but you still bleed red blood, and you have children at home, and you want a future for them. Everything about you is basically the same as me. You have a heart, you have a soul. But we're dealing with people in this world that don't have heart and don't have soul. And that's what we're fighting against right here. My thoughts. Nice to meet you, by the way.
Yeah, I don't want to, see, I'm, when this question of how we relate this to the next generation, the children essentially, when that arises, I feel ambivalent about venturing into that area because I feel like what's really going to be happening is you guys are going to be fine-tuning the message more and more to younger and younger demographics, because those are the people for whom notions like mainstream, alternative, marginal have no meaning.
Mm.
And so Fukushima is something like Fukushima, or like the blowback from geoengineering, and UCY has been in the forefront of covering that, along with other outstanding venues on our new media, which relies primarily on the internet at this point. The consequences, they're going to have to confront the consequences of that. At some point, they're going to be asking us about that. They already are. I mean, I teach a class of kids, I'd say for the most part under 13 or 14, do a martial arts class, and I hear them talking, and I'm very, very circumspect about what I say because I don't want to offend their parents. In some cases, their parents work for, in one case, a parent works for DHS. Another one, two other cases, they're NSA contractors. One of them is an active duty Marine. I mean, this is a very, very tricky thing we're into here. It is. I got to admit that. Yet, the trend is going to be for the leadership elements of the young people, the children, the adolescents, to step forward and start asking the hard questions. And so that's who we have to be timing. Our timing should be to mesh with that at the point at that critical moment, so that not that we have all the answers, but at least we could show them how to think about things and how to look at things and how to think critically, independently. That's just going to be so, for survival, that's going to be.
Yeah, number one. I mean, I've just experienced that with my son here. So he, in the last couple of months, and Charles had him on a show here. I was going to come on the show here with Charles on Thursday night because he has some things to say. He's gone down the rabbit holes now, and the biggest thing I hear from my son is that it terrifies him. He just, some days he cannot believe what he's reading and understanding, and all we can do is guide him and show them love and tell him, like, knowledge alleviates fear, and this is designed to make you fearful, Michael. And he's some days he's having a hard time with it, but I'll tell you, he's really starting to see it for what it is. And Thursday night, he talks with his friends now. He starts conversations. Months ago, he never did this. And this is something that really is important, folks, that we sit down with our children and with love, tell them what's going on. Like, put it right in their face. It's not nice. It's not pretty. But if we don't deal with it, then we're really going to be in trouble here in the near future. And I find it anytime I get a chance now, especially with young people, I really try and open up and share a few thoughts with them just to get them thinking. And that, I think, will have an amazing effect if we all do that, guys. Just a few thoughts, Charles. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. I think that really our job at this point is going to be to just give them a better start, a better point of origin for immersing themselves in the real world around them than what we had. That's really what we're doing here effectively. At least that's my opinion. And I've got kids at a couple of different ages here that are going to come into their own shortly, and the baby that's now a couple decades away from coming into his own. But what's going to happen here, I think, is that we're just going to give them the the launch pad pretty much, so that they actually have a chance to reach the heavens, as opposed to looking at the greater curtain around them and thinking that is where the sky ends. You know what I mean? This is where we're doing our work anyway at this point, and I guess often I do forget that there has been a lot of great work that has revealed a great deal over just the past few years, and in some ways I'm aware of it, but in other ways I'm kind of impatient with the revolution, as a lot of people told me I would be. What I mean? We all, when we started to get aware, we said, we want this to happen tomorrow, and of course this wasn't done to us overnight. We're not going to be able to sort of crack the code in a day either. It's going to be an incremental pushback against the incremental things that have, been erected around us as control mechanisms. So, this is what it comes down to. Listen, I am actually down to the last 5 minutes here, and I can't thank you guys enough for joining me tonight. I want to give each of you a chance to sort of give your final thoughts, if you don't mind. Well, let's start with Sty Girl, actually.
Well, just briefly that you guys have the big picture in mind, always the larger perspective and the long-term perspective. You're not just a media network. You're that, and you're a success at that, but you're a cadre development school. For your listeners and for the activists who are congealing around an institution like this. So that's how people think this is the society in the wings that has to emerge, that's going to come up with the solutions to these intractable issues. So
right on. Great thoughts, Girl. Thanks for nice meeting you today. My closing thoughts, Charles, is that kind of we got to look in the mirror every day, and we really got to think about the future of our children and what we see coming, and how fast it's coming, what we're doing to our environment, what's going on all around us, and really kind of sit back and take a look at it and see what we can do individually every day to fight back. I'm going to plug my show real quick Sunday, Charles, because I've got Dr. David Bruce Allen and Dr. Paul Hornby joining me, two recognized leaders in the world in development and research of the endocannabinoid system in the human body. Wewe're going to talk about the amazing curing properties of the hemp plant, my favorite subject in the world, Sunday, 3 p.m., Shake and Wake Radio. Pacific.
All right, 3 p.m. Pacific, that is, right?
Yep, 3 p.m. Pacific, Shake and Wake Radio. And it should be a great conversation.
Well, absolutely, and it's great subject matter, and definitely it'll be a great conversation. I like listening to your show. I don't listen to as many radio shows as I used to, but you're one of the guys that I do stop and take time to listen to now and then. I can't always jump into the chats or whatever, but believe me, I'm catching bits and pieces of things. I'm still mad that I missed that Dan Biondi show.
Yeah, that was great. He's coming on with me again 2 weeks. We're going to do a talk. And the following week, I have not this Sunday, but the next Sunday, Charles, I got a free energy inventor. I'm not going to put her name out there right now, but they are doing stuff that when this thing comes out, it's going to rock the world, and they are very close, guys. I'll tell you, Charles, there's some free energy stuff going to come out in the next 12 to 16 to 18 months that is just going to absolutely rock the world, guys. Look into it. It's something we have never needed more before in human history. Have a great day, Charles. Always a pleasure to join you, buddy. I love talking with you, my friend.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for joining me tonight, Barry, Prince, everybody. And look, we have no idea where this show goes sometimes, and this was definitely put together in an impromptu fashion. I really appreciate all of your thoughts. Cy Girl, thank you for calling in. Dylan, thanks for stopping in. I know you had technical issues, so another time we'll have a longer conversation. But look, everybody, this is what it comes down to, is that we do have to set the stage for the next generation, just like every generation before us set the stage, except this time we're not going to set it for a puppet show. This time we're going to actually try and set it for the real human beings that are going to be left in our wake, as it were. So intellectually, visually, verbally, and every which way that we can on the electronic airwaves, as it were. Let's keep trying to promote the best information, the best insightful thought that we can. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Ochelli Effect on UCY.tv, and all of you who have caught this further downstream, thank you as well. You can always find the Ochelli Effect on Facebook. There's a discussion group for the radio show. There's a page for the radio show. You can always get a hold of me. In case, I haven't given out my email in a little while because I was getting tired of the hate mail. But, hey, it's okay. Send hate mail or whatever else to Chuck, CHUCK 1972 at Lycos, spelled LYCOS.com. Yes, it's an old email address because I've been on the internet a while. Anyway. Again, thanks, Barry. I can't say enough about your show. The Big Puzzle. See, I still remember the name. And my obnoxious bumper will be hitting us just about any second now. But happy trails to you until we meet again.
That wasn't bad, Carl. Hey, we just hit on something, buddy. Look out, folks. Our first recording will be out in 3 days. Stay tuned.
Absolutely. Oh, man. Why not? Take care, everybody.
Webcam microphone approach. Webcam microphone
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
See, but I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, you know, pistols and fondle slab of choice, and on the internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from, as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously.